The beauty of uncertainty indeed. Welcome to the Stoa, everyone. Today, our session is the Uncertainment Lounge, Thriving in Uncertainty Together. And we have our good friend, Lisa Norton, returning to the Stoa. Lisa is a former professor of design leadership at the New School, and she's recently started something called the Uncertainment Lounge, a social emotional learning context for developing collective negative capability, humility, and trust. And these are all, anybody who's regular at the Stoa will find what I just said pretty delicious. And so how today is going to work, I'm going to tag in Lisa in a moment, and we're here for 90 minutes. Lisa will share her kind of present what the Uncertainment Lounge is for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to have kind of an interactive session. We may have Q&A near the end. Feel free to put your questions in the chat anytime, but you will be interactive and there will be questions. And we're deciding if the kind of the non-presentation part will be on YouTube. If you don't want to be on YouTube, just indicate it to me privately in the chat or something, and I'll edit you out. So that being said, Lisa, welcome back to the Stoa.
Thank you, Peter. And hello, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here. Yeah, well, it's a paradox, and paradox is in a way central to everything about the Uncertainment Lounge, because we're grappling together with different degrees and forms and dimensions of not knowing. So fittingly, this session is a bit of an experiment itself. I'm going to share my screen in just a sec, and the paradox of it is that I'll be giving quite a bit more framing and handrails than we normally would in our regular weekly practice. So we'll try it, and then we'll invite everybody in I'll share my screen here, and then we'll see how we feel about whether we want to continue practicing or go right into Q&A. So what I would like to do is just explain a little bit about the origin story of the Uncertainment Lounge and how we got here, how I got here. So as Bayo Akomolafe so poignantly put it, liminal times call for counterintuitive practices. Therefore, we need new language to connote uncertainty curious dispositions that these liminal times of ours seem to require and even evoke. And as Peter said, this is well-trodden territory here at the Stoa, and what I love about the Stoa. Now, the poet John Keats called this negative capability. That was his term for a positive coping or a positive grappling. Uncertainment points to the capacity to kindle states of generative uncertainty. It's based in this idea that, well, actually we're all artists, but, I guess it was Hunter S. Thompson said, when the going gets weird, the weird go pro. Well, artists are professional fear workers. So that's what we're really exploring, is the co-presence of fear and creativity and what can come out of that. So this core meta capacity can emerge only between us. That's another really interesting thing about uncertainment. So therefore it's an oblique practice of sense making, an oblique strategy of sense making. And it revolves around this idea of granting creative license not to know. So like I said, what attracted me to the Stoa, this is typified by the wisdom gems of, say, Tyson Wagner's Flowing with Unknowingness and Rhea Beck's Collective Presencing, and the whole proliferation of dialogos and circling and other sense-making practices that we're seeing globally that are so important to this time. So Uncertainty Lab, as it was originally called, got traction in the university only after the pandemic emerged because it seemed more relevant, post-pandemic. It began as a self-organized co-curricular experimental drop-in space. And we were coping together with the novel flavors of uncertainty that were emerging at that time, when the pandemic was just, we were all getting our heads and hearts around what it was. Now, personally, I've always relished the blurring of the boundaries between teaching, research, and service to the institution. So for me, one of my personal motivations was exploring the edge conditions between first, second, and third person forms of action research. This is still a fledgling experiment in process, but that's really pretty core to the project. As Peter said, I recently left the university higher ed context in order to challenge myself to deepen and broaden my own service and impact in the world. Now, in the wild, moving into the wild, the Uncertainty Lab did morph into Uncertainment Lounge. So what's at stake in kindling this collective capacity that can only emerge between us? Well, some of the things that are at stake for me are extending our capacity to care, to choose, and to respond, broadening our shared repertoire of enactive care, grounded resilience, and embodied multidimensional thriving. And hopefully we'll unpack some of this later in the Q&A. Also confronting the paradox that the expert knowledge that got us here may no longer have survival advantage, and overcoming our reluctance to collaborate with people we are different from, and they're in service of some meaningful enacted societal change, coherent societal change for the better. So how does Uncertainment Lounge work? Well, as with any collective process of transformation, we by definition don't know where we're heading. And that's really key, because knowing where we're heading is a creativity buzzkill. If we know where we're going, it's game over. So by design in Uncertainment Lounge, we don't have any maps, and we have the minimal handrails to create the boundaries of the game. Uncertainment Lounge therefore has no agenda per se, other than acknowledging, witnessing, and staying with our uncertainties. Now, the starting position of the lounge is granting or consenting the mutual permission not to know. And that's really huge for the conditions that sets. Now, how do we practice? We practice by choosing to participate with the unknowable and uncontrollable, however that arises for us in real time. We're also tracking our state experiences while building that field of relational social capability that can hold our learning, the learning that's actually unfolding. And how does all of that feel? You may be asking or wondering or feeling into your body right now about how what I'm saying is feeling to you. Well, it feels like allowing tensions and perhaps awkward silences. It might involve creating and breaking rules as we go. It might involve noticing of experiences. It might involve getting underneath my biases, my habits, my well-worn identities. And it might involve negotiation of our sameness and our difference. So sense making may happen as a result. Incoherence may happen. Certainties may happen. and dialogos may happen or not. Now, what we're typically used to are declarative starting positions, such as "we are amazingly resilient," because we know that that's what gets the likes. That's how we all want to present to one another, whether or not that's how we feel inside. The problem with that is that the declarative starting position probably does not accommodate enough humility to actually welcome the wonder and the opening to eros that is possible between us in real time. So some of the active questions we might hold would be, how might collective practices of uncertainment help us build our capacity to build capacity? Also, how might we participate more fully with the unknowable or things we can't control? Also, under what circumstances am I contracting into a group consensus, a familiar role, or a tribal explanation? And finally, in what ways might being uncertain together help us to build resilience? And what do we even mean by resilience and thriving? Now, in this fledgling experiment, at this point, what can we say about what we're learning? Well, for me, subjectively, I'm noticing the parts of me that automatically orient to what I know and what I can know or am grasping to know. Sometimes my habits of certainty seeking and my role-bound identities are stronger, much stronger than my ability to practice uncertainment. Intersubjectively, this tends to flatten and shallow the quality of the dialogue. And at moments like that, others may then in turn choose to repeat, bend, or break the pattern that I initiated. Objectively, the texture of the collective experience may vary a great deal and is really contingent upon who shows up and what they bring to this ensemble practice. The lab, the lounge, in its current form, has consistently attracted a small group of dedicated practitioners, some of whom I think are here tonight. And I'm so grateful that you're here. And also it attracts occasional drop-in participants and random tasters, because there's no requirement in the Uncertainty Lab that we have an intact cohort that is practicing with a certain aim or with certain criteria. And then finally, as I said, tonight's session is a bit unusual because I'm giving so much in the foreground to orient you. But ordinarily, we would lovingly forego these contextual frames that prime our expectations and help us to orient toward what's familiar, toward mastery, toward the sense of control that knowing always entices us into. So in closing, showing up uncertain together is simple but not easy. And because game A incentivizes and rewards us for being certain, it's no big surprise that uncertainment is actually a very challenging practice to stay with. So having said that, here's a quick overview of where we're heading. We'll say for the next 45 to 60 minutes, we'll practice uncertainment together. And then with Peter's help, and we also welcome you to pop into the chat if you're ready, when and if you're ready to shift into open reflection, sharing, and Q&A. So with that said, just a few conditions. Uncertainment Lounge is exclusive by default. So by participating, you choose to opt in, to leave your camera on, to speak when you're moved, to mute when you're not, and to maintain confidentiality. I think that's, I should have taken that out. It doesn't really apply to tonight's session. And also, we want to refrain from the most important injunction is to refrain from certainty. That's the really, really hard thing to do. So with that, I'll stop sharing and just welcome you all to the space. And before we just open the floor to, I do see some Uncertainment Lounge regulars. So really happy to have you all with us. Welcome, everybody. So I'll start just to put something out there. Let's bring more of our attention back to our own experience. See if you can find your feet, find your ground, locate your attention in your belly or in the bottoms of your feet, and take a nice deep breath into your belly. Feel the way your attention may shift or may want to shift or want to be pulled. So I'll just start with my sensations. My heart is beating and I feel all the arousal in my solar plexus of being up for this and excited, and I have care and concern about adding value to this space. And in terms of the origin story of Uncertainty Lab, my relationship with my own fear was really the gift and the inspiration of what this lab is, or the potential that it might hold, because I do believe that my relationship with fear was the impetus. So I have a weird, interesting cocktail right now of excitement and fear and love and gratitude. I have so much appreciation for the STOA and the community that this virtual institution gathers. And I feel a part of it. So there's kind of a cocktail. And then if I drop into my heart, there's just a lot of gratitude for being here. And I think zooming out beyond my own needs, what I have faith in is that only by practicing in rooms like this will we be able to turn toward the incredible precarity of our world. So how would it be that being together differently could help us to make a leap that from a certain perspective does not seem possible, seems hopeless. So I'm a doomer optimist in that sense. So with that, with that little bit of a sharing of the flavor of my experience right now, I'll open the floor and just invite anyone to popcorn in. You might respond, you might take things in a different direction, or we might just hang out in the silence for a while, and whatever is here is okay.
So what's alive for me is a concern for the collective experience, which is always something that's alive. And I was debating on messaging you, like, do you think turning off the recording would make people more comfortable to share during this portion of the thing? And I was debating to just ask you directly, but then I decided to indirectly ask you by sharing it in concert with the overall concern for people's experience. Because there's a sense that I know when the camera's on and I'm speaking authentically, it's always pulling, or I should say the recording on, it's always like pulling me in a certain way. And after sharing that, the concern kind of went away. And I'm enjoying myself talking right now. And yeah, just looking at everyone in the room, a sense of curiosity is emerging.
Yeah, thanks for that, Peter. I would just quickly interject that thanks for presencing that, first of all. And I would reinforce that if anyone feels at all uncomfortable about being on YouTube, just let us know and we'll, but having said that, why don't we, let's really take Peter's, suggestion literally and invite some response. Would anyone who prefers to turn the cameras off? Because we're in charge, we're co-creating, we're making and breaking the rules as we go along after all. So let's hear from others.
Can I talk? I haven't got it's Tara talking, and I haven't got my camera on for precisely the reason that you brought up, Peter. Like, I was going to say that before you brought it up, that like I've never been here before, and knowing I'm being recorded and I don't even know precisely why I'm being recorded or even what this is makes me very nervous, and I can't like I'm not comfortable turning on my camera if we're recording. Like it's way too anxiety inducing for me. And even if you're like this, I won't put you on YouTube, it doesn't really make a difference to me. Just being recorded is like anxiety provoking for me right now. So that is my 2 cents.
That sounds like a good instinct, Peter. Then I think my sense would be, let's go ahead and turn it off. Tara, I wouldn't want you or anyone else to feel compromised.
So I'll pause the recording. That way we can turn it back on anytime. It might feel like it's a good moment to do so.